Hey guys, Jay here, and this is my season summary so far for the F1 2025 fantasy season. First of all guys, sorry there was no video last week for the Spanish Grand Prix. I came down with COVID, but as you can hear, I'm feeling a lot better. But it did give me some time to reflect. I'm going to start here with my team rankings. All three teams climbing the rankings this past weekend in Spain. To be fair, Team 1 and Team 3 did drop in ranking after Monaco, so they've regained positions, with Team 2 climbing the rankings 2 races in a row. My personal target this year is the top 25k, minimum top 50, so I've still got some work to do, but we're getting there gradually. I've also spent some time going through my results so far this season across the last 9 races. Some things were out of my hand, and some things was just bad decision making. Finally, for this video, we're focusing on Team 1, just so that we use it as a measuring stick, so to speak. So this is the season summary page on F1 Fantasy Tools. So if you have a Patreon account on F1 Fantasy Tools, you can link your teams and then you can track your progress throughout the season, as well as compare yourself to the top team in the Global League. So like I say, we're going to look at my Team 1 for this video. And the first thing we're going to start with is transfer impact. So according to F1 Fantasy Tools, I have made 24 transfers so far this season. 3 of them were extra transfers, so they obviously cost me 30 points. But nonetheless, 24 transfers over 9 races. The good news is I've had no negative impact on my budget. It's all been positive. The transfers I've made have brought me in an extra 8.7 million. So you would think things are going well. Unfortunately, when we look at my points impact, it's a different story, because I've actually lost 153 points, with 101 points coming in China. So according to my season summary, I traded Albon and Doohan for Bearman and Hulkenberg, and I traded McLaren and Williams for Mercedes and Ferrari. Now, Albon and Doohan to Bearman and Hulkenberg, that was fine. It didn't lose me any points. But McLaren and Williams to Mercedes and Ferrari cost me 81 points, and then add in the extra 20 points, 101. And now if we go to my results on F1 Fantasy, on the F1 Fantasy game, we can see here we've got the 2 extra transfers at negative 20, and then negative 23 for Ferrari after their disqualification. So it's not that I didn't score points, because Mercedes came away with 69, but it is to say that basically the negative points plus the points I've lost out by getting rid of McLaren and Williams totaled to 101 points. The other interesting thing is that, again, despite gaining most of my budget in Japan, I lost 43 points this time. Piastri and Hadjar to Russell and Stroll, with Ferrari and Mercedes to McLaren and HAAS, and both driver assets and constructor assets on this occasion cost me points. So like I say, nothing but positive budget, but I've lost over half my points in my transfer decisions this season. Next, we have point distributions. I'm not going to delve too much into this, but in short, this tells you your best and worst scoring assets and session types. So for me, Piastri and McLaren have scored me my most points, with Ferrari and Doohan getting negative points. And then for session and type, race positions have scored me the most points, with DNFs and disqualifications costing me points. In fact, the disqualifications and DNFs have cost me 140 points alone. So now let's break it down into positive and negative, starting with positive events. So positive events are your fastest laps, your driver of the days, and your fastest pit stops. For my Team 1, I've only got 11 out of 38 positive events, scoring 135 out of a whopping 435. So that's 300 points that I've missed out on just through fastest laps, driver day, and fastest pit stops. In fact, you can see here that I haven't even got any fast pit stops so far this season, and most of my positive points have come from fastest laps. And if we look at by race, most of my positive points came in Miami when I used Limitless, with no positive points in Imola and Japan. Now let's compare that to negative events. So for negative events, this is DNFs and disqualifications, and I've only hit 6 out of 58. So despite missing 52 negative impacts, I've still lost 140 points. That being said, if you're having a really bad season and getting a lot of DNFs, the total of combined DNF and disqualification points is a whopping 1,170 points. If we go by race, not surprisingly, we've got Australia and China. Australia, we can see here, Australia, there was obviously a lot of DNFs, and in China, as we've already hit on, I had Ferrari. So what about Team 2 and Team 3? Well, let's start with Team 2. So for Team 2, I've made 23 transfers, 2 were extra, so that's a negative 20. Budget, mostly positive. I have lost 1.3 million with Team 2 in my transfer decisions, but otherwise I've gained 8.8 million. 3.6 million came in China. And then if we look at points, we can see kind of similar to Team 1. I've actually lost 105 points. Most of them coming in Miami, where I traded Russell and Bortoleto for Alonso and Lawson, costing me negative 46. So again, mostly positive budget, but getting hit by points. And we're just going to go to the positive and negative events. Positive events wise, 15 out of 38. So I've got more positive event points for Team 2. Most of them coming in Monaco with 45 when I used Limitless. And I've actually got a mix here of fastest laps, driver day, and overall pit stops. And then for negative, I've got more negative events for this team. 10 out of 58, costing me 220 points, with 80 points coming in Miami, 60 in Australia, and 60 in China. And then finally, Team 3, my highest ranked team at the moment. I've only made 16 transfers with 1 extra, so I've only lost 10 points for extra transfers. Budget gain, I've only lost 0.2, otherwise 9.7 million gains in budget. And points wise, nowhere near as bad as Team 1 and Team 2. I've only lost 34 points, gaining 197. Most of them coming this past weekend in Spain with 95 points. The most I lost was in Saudi Arabia, negative 14, where I traded Ocon and Doohan for Albon and Gasly. Gasly obviously having that DNF with Yuki Tsunoda. For positive events, 15 out of 38 again. A mix, not as many fastest laps as Team 2, but fastest laps, driver days, and a few fast pit stops. Most of the points coming in Australia, surprisingly, with 50 points. And then for negative events, 8 out of 58, so in between Team 1 and Team 2, costing me 160 points, mostly in Australia, a negative 80, and a negative 40 in Miami. So what does this tell me? Well, it tells me that you can gain budget, and that's great, But if you're not bringing in the points, then it's not helping. Obviously, the more points you have, the higher up the rankings you are. But to get more points, you need more budget to get in the better assets. So, in fairness, if it wasn't for the disqualification in China for Ferrari, this wouldn't be as bad as it looks. Those who had Williams gained from that. But in short, comparison-wise, we do need to consider points as well as budget, because it's fine bringing in assets that might gain you a little bit extra, but if they're going to score you a little less, then obviously that's going to build up over time. And so again, it's just trying to get that balance right for each race. I will admit, I do use the team calculator, the team budget builder, sorry. So I do try to focus on those kind of assets that are likely to gain. The only one time I just went with my gut instinct was when I brought in Leclerc for Saudi Arabia, and it paid off, but then didn't pay off later on. But otherwise, yeah, I've definitely made some decisions. For example, if we go back to the scores, I would say Japan was probably a bad decision. I had George Russell as my ×2 for some reason. As we saw for China, not only did I have Ferrari, but I brought in Mercedes, so I didn't have McLaren. Again, I can't remember why I did this. But we can see here that looking at the score comparisons, Team 3 for the first 3 races, so Australia, China, and Japan, Team 3 was actually my best team. And then if we move up to Bahrain, in fact, let me do it this way. If we go to the next 3, so we've got Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Miami, we can see that Team 2 won in Bahrain, followed by Team 1 in Saudi Arabia, then Team 1 again in Miami because I had Limitless, but then Team 1 started to drop off again with Team 3 taking the reins in Imola, and then for Monaco, Team 2 because I had Limitless, and then this past weekend in Spain, Team 2 again. So Team 3, Team 2 seem to be the better teams for me so far this season. Team 1 seems to be the one that's been struggling on and off. So yeah, work to do. Not out the woodworks yet, but just wanted to share this, give you a bit of an insight as to, you know, what kind of impact your transfer making has, not just in terms of budget, but in terms of points. Needless to say, this is why sometimes it's maybe better to go with an asset that sure might not look like they're going to gain in budget, but you're confident that they can score good points. So, for example, look at Hulkenberg this past weekend. He was due for probably a 0.2 decrease, and just knocked it out of the park, you know, and is now definitely a pick for Canada. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, sorry there was no video last week. I'll have my Canada team selection video next week before the Grand Prix, and I have got other stuff that I'm working on in the background for the summer break that I hope you'll enjoy. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this has helped you make some decisions moving forward, and I wish you the best of luck for Canada. Thanks for watching.